Hello, everybody. This is AJ Locascio here with Umbrella MD. I'm so excited today to welcome our guest, Miriam Edelman. Miriam is here today to talk about, with an employment focus, the Americans with Disabilities Act and other laws. Miriam brings a rare combination of legislative and policy expertise to her work. She has served on both sides of Capitol Hill and holds advanced degrees from Cornell and Columbia in public administration and social work. As a commissioner on the DC Commission on Persons with Disabilities, her work spans democracy, health policy, disability rights, and civic education. Miriam, thank you so much for being here today.
You're welcome. Thank you so much for this opportunity.
All right, let's get started.
Thank you.
Mhm.
So in this presentation, we will have a think about it section and then talk about legal protections in terms of federal laws and state and local laws. So think about it. You can reflect on the following. First, what are some of your strengths that could be beneficial to offices? Second, where can you grow? Third, what about your neurodivergence, the way you work, might need accommodation? Fourth, discuss what you know about discrimination in terms of employment. Fifth, discuss what you know about laws regarding people with disabilities. Feel free to write or post your thoughts on social media, in comments or on socials. You can pause this video, do writing, and then continue. You can also just watch this video. Now we're going to be talking about legal protections. National, state, and local laws protect the rights of people with disabilities. This presentation focuses on employment-related provisions. Laws prohibit discrimination against people with disabilities, and at least some generally require that workplaces provide reasonable accommodations, which are changes that help employees work. State and local laws can be more friendly to employees than federal laws, and I'll talk about it later, but sometimes a workplace can be covered under state and or local laws, but not federal laws. Now I will talk about national laws. The 5 federal laws that protect people with disabilities from discrimination in applying for jobs and working are the Americans with Disabilities Act, also known as ADA, the Rehabilitation Act, the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, the Vietnam-era Veterans Readjustment Assistance Act, and the Civil Service Reform Act. This presentation will be on the ADA primarily. So the ADA has 3 definitions of a person with a disability, and the definitions are: an individual with a disability has 1. has a physical or mental impairment that substantially limits one or more major life activities. 2. has a history or record of such an impairment, such as cancer, that is in remission. And 3. is perceived by others having such an impairment, such as a person who has scars from a severe burn. The third definition could be especially useful to autistic people who do not know that they are autistic, as some people get an autism diagnosis when they are adults. They may not know that they are autistic, but their offices may think that they are autistic, and the office's perception automatically covers the employee. And the ADA does not list every disability. In addition, people do not apply to be covered by the ADA. People are just covered by the ADA. And I will be focusing on employment in terms of the ADA, but also in terms of this entire presentation. Title 1 prohibits covered employers from discriminating against people with disabilities in all employment-related activities, including hiring, pay, benefits, firing, and promotions. And one activity that's not allowed is harassment, which is a type of workplace bullying. According to the ADA, harassment counts as employment discrimination. And the Job Accommodation Network, which has a lot of great resources, defines harassment. And as you can see, harassment is unwelcome conduct that is based on race, color, religion, sex, including pregnancy, national origin, age, 40 or older, disability, or genetic information. Harassment becomes unlawful where 1. Enduring the offensive conduct becomes a condition of continued employment, or 2. The conduct is severe or pervasive enough to create a work environment that a reasonable person would consider intimidating, hostile, or abusive. And the Job Accommodation Network says that very small incidents, including isolated incidents, unless extremely serious, are not illegal. But to be considered illegal, the conduct must create an environment that would be intimidating, hostile, or offensive to reasonable people. And I'll talk more about Title I of the ADA. Title I mandates that employers provide a reasonable accommodation, also known as RA, to a qualified individual, so applicant or employee, with a disability, unless the RA causes undue hardship, meaning that an RA would be too hard or costly. And if the RA costs too much money, the workplace must give the employee a choice of giving the RA or paying for the part of the RA that leads to undue hardship. And you might be wondering, what is a qualified individual? So the National Network Information, Guidance, and Training on the Americans with Disabilities Act defines a qualified individual as, quote, a person who meets skill, experience, education, or other requirements of an employment position they hold or seek, and who can perform the essential functions of the person with or without reasonable accommodation, close quote. There may be some tasks that people with disabilities could not do due to the direct threat cause. So direct threat means that there is a large chance of major harm to oneself or others that RAs cannot decrease or end. The same National Network Information, Guidance, and Training on the Americans with Disabilities Act gives the following example. An employee who has uncontrolled seizures due to epilepsy might pose a direct threat in a workplace where they are operating heavy machinery. Employers should take the direct threat cause seriously. They should not think that certain disability-related traits automatically equal a direct threat. For example, they really should not say that stimming or ticking means that someone cannot do their job. And I think about Morton Duran, who Oliver Stone wrote about in a book. Morton Duran is a surgeon with Tourette's syndrome, and he did not display verbal and motor tics when he was doing surgery. And really, imagine the number of people who could not have been helped if he was not permitted to do his job. So it's really important that people with disabilities are allowed to work and are allowed to have accommodations, which I'll talk about pretty soon. I mentioned covered employers, and you might wonder what covered employers mean. So covered employees generally have at least 15 employees. And private employees who have at least 15 or more employees, or state and local government employers of any size, must provide reasonable accommodations. And Section 501 of the Rehabilitation Act covers federal agencies and employers that are not covered by Title I of the ADA. So the same National Network Information, Guidance, and Training on the Americans with Disabilities Act defines essential functions as the job duties that are fundamental to the position. So meaning you can't really have a job without these duties. And workers with disabilities have to perform the essential functions with or without accommodations. And whether an employee with a disability requests an accommodation, or no matter if the employee requests an accommodation or not, they still need to be able to perform the essential functions of the job. But there are notable rules regarding religious entities. So religious entities have the same number of rules requirement as the employees, which is 15 employees. And generally, religious entities cannot discriminate against qualified applicants and workers with disabilities. However, the type of a job of a person with a disability would affect whether that individual is protected by the ADA and other laws. So members of the clergy and other employees doing religious functions, religious duties such as leading services, are usually not protected by the ADA. But other employees, such as custodians, are protected under the ADA. If a person feels that they have been discriminated against, they can at least file a charge of discrimination due to disability by contacting the U.S. Equal Employment Opportunity Commission within 180 days of the discrimination. They can also talk with a lawyer or a law firm or a legal clinic. So now I'll be talking about state and local laws. As I said, state and local laws can cover some employers that federal laws do not. So state and local laws can have broader definitions of disabilities than, and sometimes cover smaller workplaces as defined by the number of employees than federal laws. So for example, Washington, D.C. law covers all employees. Washington, D.C. law covers all employers. Even if an employer has one worker, the employer has to abide by the D.C. law, which is the D.C. Human Rights Act. There are related advocacy actions regarding state and local law. One is to research your jurisdiction's disability employment laws. And another advocacy action is to try to get your jurisdictions to cover workplaces with fewer employees if your jurisdiction's law have just the ADA requirement or close to it. So suppose in your state law covers employers of at least 10 people. 10 people is better than the ADA. It covers more offices, but it's not one. And if you want to try to convince your states that they could cover more offices, you could highlight DC and other places, and you would be saying that what you're asking for happens. It is not unprecedented. Thank you. And if you'd like to contact me, visit my LinkedIn page, which I have right here. Thank you so much.